When you picture a kidnapping, your mind usually goes to something cinematic, like a dark street, a sudden
The
scuffle.
screeching van, right.
Exactly. It's chaotic, it's violent, and it happens in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, I mean, we're conditioned by movies and TV to think of these events as, sudden ruptures in reality,
Mhm.
something incredibly forceful and immediate.
But what if the weapon used to take someone's freedom wasn't a gun or a getaway car? What if it was a photocopier?
That is a terrifying thought.
Right. What if a kidnapping was orchestrated in slow motion over the course of 33 days using the incredibly mundane, everyday machinery of city bureaucracy? Because that is the mission for our deep dive today.
And it is quite the mission.
We're taking you through this chilling stack of legal exhibits and court documents, and they detail the alleged anatomy of a totally fabricated police report. We're going to look at how a single piece of paper, a citizen's crime report, was allegedly altered, dressed up, and manipulated over time.
All to manufacture a completely fraudulent legal case.
Exactly.
And, this is what makes these sources so compelling for us to examine. We are strictly looking at the paper trail laid out in these civil exhibits. Like you said, this isn't a high-speed police chase.
No, definitely not.
It's a methodical, slow-motion weaponization of bureaucracy. According to the filings, these documents detail a timeline where an Oakland police officer, Jacko Romero, allegedly manipulated city records to lay the groundwork for a fraudulent Elder Abuse Restraining Order.
Which is just wild.
It is. And the lawsuit claims that restraining order ultimately provided the legal pretext for the kidnapping of the plaintiff, Lawana A. Reed, by the Oakland Police Department on October 2019.
Okay, well, let's unpack this. Because to understand how a document gets allegedly manipulated to that extreme, we first have to look at the inciting date.
Right. August 2019.
Yeah, we have to look at what actually happened, or I guess what the exhibits prove absolutely did not happen on that day.
Because if you're going to build a false narrative, you have to plant your flag somewhere in time. You need a date. And the police reports, authored by Officer Romero, claim there was a massive ongoing neighborhood disturbance on that specific Thursday. But the factual reality, which we see laid out meticulously in the exhibits, paints a completely different picture.
Oh, the receipts in these sources are undeniable. You can literally track the plaintiff's entire day, hour by hour. She was nowhere near any sort of neighborhood disturbance.
Not even close.
She went to the bank, withdrew $7,500. She picked up food from Round Table Pizza, went to the Habitat for Humanity store for home improvement supplies, ran a, mundane errand at CVS.
A highly documented, incredibly normal Thursday.
Exactly. And while she was running those normal errands, her home at 7839 Laco Street was essentially a bustling construction site.
Right. The exhibits show licensed contractors from Harry Clark Plumbing and Heating were there replacing a sewer lateral.
And that is not quiet work.
No, not at all. There was a giant cement truck parked right out front. A City of Oakland Public Works inspector was physically on site to sign off on the municipal work. Plus, the Morales family was inside doing interior renovations.
So wait, you have multiple contractors, a giant cement truck, and literally an official city inspector standing in the yard?
Pretty much the worst possible time and place to fabricate a crime.
Right, because you have half a dozen impartial witnesses just hanging out there. But despite all of this, the filings introduce us to this initial document. The exhibits label it as the first version of the Citizen's Crime Report, completely authored by Officer Romero, and dated that exact same day, August 15.
And he lists a neighbor, Moses Jacko Jr., as the complainant.
Which immediately presents some glaring mechanical inconsistencies, right?
Oh, absolutely. According to court testimony cited in these exhibits, Moses Jacko Jr. was illiterate. He could not read or write. Yeah. He physically could not have drafted or submitted any of the complex supporting documents attached to this police report. And furthermore, the filings show that on September 6, which is weeks after this report was supposedly written, Jacko spoke to a completely different officer and explicitly stated he didn't even know the plaintiff's name.
Wait, really?
Yes, he was asking for help getting her information.
So the guy supposedly filing the formal complaint in August doesn't even know who he's complaining about in September.
That's what the records show.
But Officer Romero's handwritten report from August 15th already has her named as the suspect. I mean, it's like an author writing a detailed, scathing review for a restaurant they haven't eaten at yet, but accidentally spelling the chef's name wrong on every single receipt.
That is a perfect analogy.
Because that's the real kicker here.
Yeah.
Romero allegedly misspelled her name as Lawana R. Reed instead of A. Reed, and that specific misspelling shows up across multiple typed and handwritten documents.
It's a massive fingerprint left on the alleged fabrication. When you are analyzing forensic documents, you look for recurring anomalies. And that exact same unique misspelling -R Reed appears in the supposedly handwritten complaint from the illiterate neighbor, the typed supporting documents, and the formal police files.
Which heavily implies a single author orchestrating the entire file.
Exactly.
But here's the part that really trips me up, just thinking about the mechanics of this for a second. If the report was supposedly written and finalized by an officer on August 15th, why didn't it have an official incident number on it? Don't police databases automatically assign a number the second you hit submit?
Well, that actually brings us to one of the most crucial systemic details of this entire setup. It's the concept of a database holding pen, or what the exhibits frame as a 33-day track.
A 33-day trap.
Right. In many municipal record systems, a user doesn't have to finalize a report immediately. You can just generate a draft. So this initial version of the Citizens Crime Report was deliberately left open. It was unassigned to any formal incident number for 33 days.
Wow.
It didn't get officially logged as incident report number 19-04-8359 until September 17.
But why leave it open in the system for over a month? Like, what does that actually accomplish mechanically?
It creates an open window for manipulation. By not formalizing the report with an incident number, the database doesn't lock the file down. It allows someone to essentially retrofit the crime.
Oh, I see.
Over those 33 days, the exhibits allege Romero gathered and manipulated other administrative records to stuff into this file to make it look robust. Like, he allegedly took a legitimate code enforcement file copy, which is a civil document he accessed internally, and literally handwrote the plaintiff's address on it.
Just to misrepresent a mundane civil matter as a criminal one.
Exactly. He also attached fabricated gang-stalking documents and this bizarre circular labeling the plaintiff a threat to society.
And the sources note that threat to society document was created just 44 days after the plaintiff even moved into the neighborhood.
The alleged premeditation is just staggering.
So this initial file is this chaotic, numbering-free draft being stuffed with misspelled, manufactured evidence. But a draft sitting in a database isn't a legal weapon yet. I mean, to actually use this against someone in a courtroom to get a judge to sign a restraining order, it needed to look official. It had to evolve.
Precisely. The narrative couldn't survive as a messy draft. The filings show that later versions of this report were all about retroactive tightening. This dressed-up version emerged later after an initial restraining order and criminal case against the plaintiff were actually dismissed by a court.
Oh, so when the first attempt failed, the paperwork had to be sanitized and bolstered. Here's where it gets really interesting. To make it look legitimate, the exhibits allege Romero retroactively adds that incident number we talked about, the 19-04-8359. He changes the classification of the crime in the system to a 415 neighborhood disturbance. He adds a specific police beat to the form.
And he even slaps a photocopied Oakland police insignia onto the paperwork to give it the veneer of official city business.
It's the bureaucratic equivalent of putting on a fake mustache and a badge.
It really is. He's dressing the document up for the court. The filings also allege he personally typed the legal response, contesting the plaintiff's own civil restraining order against the neighbor Jacko.
Because, again, Jacko was illiterate.
Right. Yet this legal response contains complex justifications and counterclaims that Jacko fundamentally couldn't have drafted. The file was also padded with post-dated incident cards from October and December, well after the initial August 15 date.
So you have the messy draft and then the dressed-up defense file after things go wrong in court. But what happens when the public comes knocking? Because these are public records, right? I mean, imagine you're standing in your yard with a city inspector, completely unaware that on paper you're currently the suspect in a massive neighborhood riot.
This is a real thought.
Eventually, you'd want to see those files. And if a citizen demands to see a police file, the department legally has to provide it.
Yes, and this is where we see the bureaucracy's ultimate defense mechanism, redaction. The plaintiff obtained the next iteration of this file via the City of Oakland's Next Request website, which is their Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA, portal.
Right.
And when you look at the version provided to the public, it has been heavily sanitized by the system. The plaintiff's name and address were entirely redacted. Another document in the file was completely blacked out by redaction software.
So they're scrubbing the file before handing it over to the person it targets. But the most shocking alteration in this FOIA release isn't what they blacked out, it's how time itself was manipulated.
Yeah, this is key.
In the public release, any direct mention of a specific incident occurring on August 15 is magically gone.
And what's fascinating here is why the system would do that. If you follow the plaintiff's logic, the department knew nothing happened on August 15th. The receipts, the plumbers, the city inspector, the alibi was ironclad.
Right, you can't fake a riot around a cement truck.
Exactly. So to protect the structural integrity of the report against a public records request, the timeline shifts.
Right.
The dates are broadened in the system to a vague range, August 15th to September 13th.
It's brilliant in a terrifying way. If you can't prove a specific crime on a specific day because of an alibi, you just blur the edges. You claim a vague, month-long pattern of harassment that's impossible to disprove because it's not tied to a specific timestamp.
Precisely. And there's another huge red flag the sources point out in this FOIA release, the administrative handling of the incident cards.
Oh, yeah, explain that.
So incident cards are handwritten, and by strict police protocol, they're supposed to be issued once and kept by the complainant. They are essentially a receipt for the citizen to prove they reported something. Yet, multiple handwritten incident cards somehow ended up right back in the official FOIA records.
Which logically proves the citizen didn't have them. The department was controlling, holding, and repurposing these handwritten cards the entire time to pad their own internal files.
It demonstrates a closed loop of paperwork. But even with all this padding, blurring of dates, and FOIA redactions, there was still a massive logistical hurdle. The report eventually had to be finalized in the digital records system to generate that official incident number.
Right.
But if the allegedly corrupt officer pushes the button himself, his digital fingerprints are on the final entry. He needed a proxy to legitimize it.
Right, he needs someone else's login credentials attached to the final submission. And that introduces us to the next pivotal document in the exhibits. We are now at September 17, 2019. This is exactly 33 days after the supposed August 15 incident.
The holding pen is finally closing.
Yes, but it's not Romero who files the formal entry. The system logs show it's an OPD evidence technician named Karan James.
And this is where the bureaucratic friction actually shows up in the data. You have a human technician sitting at a terminal trying to process a bizarre file. Karan James enters the report into the system under disorderly conduct or disturbing the peace. But look at the timestamp she enters into the database.
Oh, man, this part is crazy.
The system claims the incident on August 15 lasted from 0000 to 23:59.
A 24-hour disturbance, literally from midnight to midnight. I mean, let's just visualize what that even looks like in reality. Around-the-clock, 24-hour riot on a quiet residential street that somehow generated 0 911 calls. Because the sources confirm there is absolutely no CAD purge.
Right, let's explain that for a second. CAD stands for Computer-Aided Dispatch. Every time someone calls 911, the dispatch computer logs it automatically. A CAD purge is just the official system record of those calls.
Got it.
The exhibits show that a search of the CAD system for this street on this date came up completely empty. No one called 911 for a 24-hour riot.
It's completely absurd on its face. But wait, I have to stop you there and push back on the software mechanics a bit.
Sure.
I understand typing up a fake document in Word, but how does an official police database physically allow an evidence technician to submit a 24-hour crime report with no 911 logs? And more importantly, who did she list as the suspect? Wouldn't the software reject an incomplete entry?
Well, that leads to the most critical, almost tragic detail of this digital entry. Despite logging a 24-hour disturbance, evidence technician James did not list the plaintiff as a suspect or an involved party.
Wow.
The field was left completely blank.
Wait, so she logs a 24-hour crime into a permanent database but refuses to say who did it?
Exactly. She only lists the neighbor, Moses Jacko Jr., as the victim. Because there was no 911 call, no physical evidence, and no actual incident to draw from, the technician seemingly refused to falsify a suspect's name into the formal digital system.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, the database required a baseline of proof she didn't have to link a specific person to the crime, so she left the suspect blank, essentially creating an empty shell.
That is a staggering detail. The report is finally locked in. It has a number, but it's completely hollow. A crime with a victim lasting 24 hours, committed by a literal ghost.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it shows a systemic failure that goes well beyond one officer's alleged actions. According to the FOIA records and the sources, the department falsely claimed this exact case, this suspect-free, bizarre 24-hour disturbance, was still open as late as March 2022.
You're kidding.
No. Keeping a baseless report open for years demonstrates a systemic effort to maintain the illusion of an ongoing investigation. Why? Because under transparency laws, you can deny a citizen access to their full, unredacted records if the file is deemed active.
It's the ultimate bureaucratic shield. Like, we can't show you the files proving you did nothing wrong because we're actively investigating the nothing that you did.
It's maddening.
It really is. But the timing is what really gets me here. Why September 17th? Why did this empty shell of a report absolutely need to be finalized into the system on that specific Tuesday, 33 days later?
Because of what the exhibits show happened on Wednesday, the very next day.
The trap springs. September 18th, 2019, the plaintiff's exhibits show a fraudulent elder abuse temporary restraining order, or TRO, is filed in family court.
Yeah.
And what is attached to this restraining order as the foundational, legally binding evidence, that first version of the false citizen's crime report.
This is the culmination of the 33-day setup. Mechanically, you cannot walk into a court and get a restraining order without a documented official history of harassment or violence.
Right, the court needs proof.
Exactly. So the 33-day open window was allegedly used to manufacture that history. And it's vital to note, they chose an elder abuse TRO specifically, filed in family court.
Right, because family court and elder abuse TROs have different legal weight and different jurisdictional requirements than just a standard civil dispute.
Yes.
But according to the filings, the contents of this TRO are just as fabricated as the police report. First of all, the sources state Moses Jacko Jr. wasn't an elder. Furthermore, family court usually requires some sort of familial, domestic, or caretaker relationship, but there was absolutely no relationship between him and the plaintiff.
Not at all.
In the documents, the neighbor is literally quoted as saying he doesn't talk to the plaintiff unless provoked. They were just people who lived on the same street.
So how do you bridge that legal gap? How do you trick a family court judge into thinking a random neighborhood spat is actually a bitter domestic dispute that belongs in their jurisdiction?
Right. How do you do that?
You have to insert a highly specific emotional detail into the TRO request.
And this is the part of the exhibits that genuinely blew my mind. To fabricate a domestic relationship out of thin air, the TRO includes a formal legal request regarding the custody of a brown pit bull named Jacko.
It's incredibly calculated.
Yeah.
A custody dispute over a dog implies a shared life. It implies a shared household, a deep personal entanglement, and shared property. It perfectly frames the conflict for a family court judge.
But the sources are crystal clear. Dominique was Jacko's own dog. The plaintiff had absolutely nothing to do with this animal. There was never a custody dispute. It was entirely cut from whole cloth just to check a jurisdictional box for the judge.
And this raises the ultimate question of authorship. Who would know exactly what legal buzzwords, jurisdictional loopholes, and fictional scenarios to insert into a family court document to ensure it gets approved?
I mean, definitely not the illiterate neighbor.
No. The final link in these sources brings the whole alleged conspiracy together. The plaintiff's exhibits include expert handwriting analysis, confirming that Officer Jacko Romero wrote both the initial citizen's crime report and this fraudulent elder abuse TRO.
Wow. So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Why are we dragging you through the weeds of database protocols, misspelled names, FOIA redactions, and fake dog custody battles?
It's an important question.
Because this isn't just an isolated story about a bad neighbor dispute. It is a terrifying look at how fragile our freedom actually is when faced with the unchecked, unfeeling machinery of administrative power.
It shows how unverified paperwork can be weaponized if you understand the system's blind spots.
Yeah.
A misspelled name here, a repurposed code enforcement memo there, a photocopied logo, a blank suspect field in a database.
Yeah.
Individually, to an auditor, they just look like clerical errors.
Yeah.
But stacked together, deliberately, over 33 days, they form a legally binding document that the courts treat as objective truth.
And once that temporary restraining order was approved by a judge who thought they were protecting an elder in a bitter domestic dispute, the trap was set. The police department had the legal pretext they needed. The paperwork justified the action.
Yeah.
And the exhibits allege that on October 1st, 2019, they used that fraudulent piece of paper to physically abduct the plaintiff.
To synthesize what these civil exhibits show us, the foundation of this event wasn't a crime committed in the streets. There was no chase, no shootout. It was 33 days of allegedly manipulating administrative files, blurring dates to dodge transparency laws, and forging signatures.
Which is terrifying.
The frightening part is that the legal system worked exactly as it was designed to. It processed the forms, it approved the orders, but it was fed poisoned data from the very beginning.
It brings us right back to where we started. The weapon wasn't a gun, it was a photocopier and a database login. And it leaves you with a chilling thought to mull over as you go about your day.
Oh, absolutely.
We've just seen how much manual effort it took for one person to allegedly forge documents, manipulate databases, and dodge public records requests to ruin someone's life. But we are rapidly moving into an era where legal filings, database entries, and police reports are being digitized and automated by AI.
That's a very real concern.
If the bureaucratic machinery is already this vulnerable to a human with a pen and a photocopier, what happens when malicious actors can use automated systems to generate thousands of perfectly formatted, interlocking fake legal documents in seconds? Will the system even know it's being poisoned? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.